Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and today we're going to look at the ListBox in VisualBasic.net. The ListBox is very much like the ComboBox, except it takes up a little bit more real estate on our Windows form. But by knowing how to use the ListBox, we'll also learn how to use the ComboBox. So it's important to learn both controls that we can put on our Windows form. Now, what's nice about the ListBox is it also has the ability to show multiple columns as we display information. And I'll show you that as we run this program. So let's go into Visual Basic and take a look in Visual Studio at our program that I have coded. I have a form that I've created, and in that form I've dragged in a list box that I call my list box, and you'll see that it has some values already in here, and I'll show you how that was done. And then I have 6 buttons below here that I'm going to use to demonstrate the ways we can populate the items into our list box. Normally these events that we have coded down below here would occur in the Windows load event. We would populate the list box prior to it being displayed so that we'd have all the data there for the user. So while we have these coded in this demo with these particular buttons, in fact in programming we would have that normally in the form load event. I've also have a text box down below with the add button, and we'll show you that as well, where we can add an individual item into our list box. In fact, this text box with the add button and this list box becomes basically a very bulky combo box because it'll have all the functionality of a combo box, but it will take up the real estate because I'll have to have the add button in there to put it in place. So let's take a look at our list box in general to see how we get items into our list box. So I'm going to select the list box itself, and I'm going to come up to the Smart GIF at the very top, and I'm going to click on this, and you'll see that I can use Databound Items, and I'm going to show you that very quickly. Here's a situation where I could choose to go with a data source, for example from a database, and I'd use the binding source in here, and then I'd take the table that I'm going to be working with and maybe the field from that table. So binding it is one option to using the list box. But we're going to do it a little bit differently. And one of the options below in our Smart GIF is editing items. And I've already done this, but I want to show you how I did it. I clicked on Edit Items, and it brings up a string collection editor. And here's where we key in one item for each item in the list box, and then hit the Enter key. And this represents 7 different items that I've coded in, and you see them displayed over here on the left side. So real quickly, I'm going to select all those, and I'm going to hit Control X to cut them out and say OK, and you'll see everything goes away. I can also bring in the items not only through the Edit Items on the Smart GIF, but I can come down to the Items property of the list box and click on the collection. And there I see a ellipse button that I'm going to click on, which will also bring up my string editor. And it's empty right now because we just deleted it, but I can right click and paste in what I had copied and put it back in place and say OK. So we can come in by using the Smart GIF at the very top of our list box or coming into the items collection. Now this is hard coding in values, and it may be acceptable for certain applications, but a lot of times we want to load this in dynamically, so we'll look at different ways. But just remember, you can code in through the items collection directly through the string editor at design time the values you want in your list box. So let's take a look at this running first of all, and we'll see that on its initial display it will have these values in place. So I'm going to hit the start button and hit load it up, and they're all in place on that. Now I'm going to hit the clear button, and then I'll show you the code behind the clear button on that. So we're going to clear out the items that were displayed, and the list box is now clear on it. Let's take a look now at the code that goes with that clear button event. Okay. And here we come down to the code, and I'm going to open up the area for the clear button click event. And one of the commands that you'll use a lot with a ListBox or a ComboBox is the items clear method. So in this case, we're using a ListBox, but it could have been a ComboBox. I'm using the items clear to clear out all the values that are in the ListBox. And here I'm also using the clear selected, so nothing is selected in the ListBox. And I'm also clearing out the text box that's down below on our form. So this is what's happening. Very simple code. The important command here is the items clear method to clear out the ListBox. Let's go back to our form for a minute, look at the design. And I'm going to show you the basic command that we use a lot, and that's loading by the items add. And so I'm going to show you the activity behind using the items add method to populate the button. And that one appears here. And I'm going to click on the items add. And here we see, once again, I've cleared out the ListBox first before I begin the process. And the items add method appears here. And so I'm going to the items collection area using the add method on the items, and I'm adding in the values that you saw hard-coded with the string collection editor. Now, if you have a number of items that you're adding in this way, you should turn on or issue the begin update, which turns off the painting event for the ListBox. That'll allow it not to flicker and send off other activities on that. So hitting begin update, then using your items add method, and then at the end of that section of adding, you want to do an end update. We'll start the painting of the ListBox again. So here we add in individual items through this method, and I'll show you other ways we can add in. Right now we're seeing it adding in string values, and we can add other things in. Remember, this will take an object value into it and present the string equivalent as it displays. And then I have the clear selected at the very bottom. So let's watch how this basic items add method loads in our values as well. So let's run our program again. Start. And our program is up and running. I'm going to clear it out first, and we'll click on the load by items add method that we just looked at. And they came in just as we code them, each individual item being added one at a time. And you see that it came in the order in which we added them in. Okay, let's take a look at now the adding of the items by using the add range method approach. Okay, back to our code. And I'm going to come down to that area where we use the by range. And one of the first ones I want to do is this one, so I'm going to make this an active code, and I'm going to deactivate the one below it. And we're going to use the clear method again, and then I'm going to hit the items add range, not just add, but add range. Here I declare a new object, and I'm bringing in the initialization list of the string values for this ListBox to be populated. So let's run this one, and we'll see the add range method here brings them in very quickly as well. Now let me also point out before I run this that I do not code with an add range the begin update and end update around my adding of the values. The add range does not require that, so that this gives you a very efficient way to load in values into your items collection. Let's run this one and see it work. Okay, I've got my program up and running. I'm going to clear it out from the hard-coded values we had for the initial load, and then I'm going to hit the add range button, and we'll see those load back in. And there they are coming in as we had coded it in our add range method for this particular code. So we see right away we have the simple adding one line one item at a time with the items add, or we can load a number of items in with the items add range. Now let's take a look at a little bit more at this add range, because we can add a lot more different ways with that particular method. Okay, back to the code, and let's comment out the one where we just did the names using the string values. And I'm going to hit the comment out, and I'm going to activate the line below it. And this time we're going to do it, but we're going to put in numeric values. And here I have decimal places as part of some of the values that I'll initially load this in. So basically this will become an object of a double data type, and that data type has a toString method to its class. And because of that, we'll see this display, but basically it's displaying as a string value, not as a numeric value as we look at this. Let me run this one with the numbers in place. Okay, we've got the form up and running. I'm going to clear it out. This time we're going to add the numbers in, and there they come in. They're seen basically as string values that have been converted from their numeric data type to a string type to be displayed on this. So you can use this to display numeric values, and it will issue behind the scenes the toString function of that primitive data type. Let's go back and take a look at the code again, and I'm going to comment out the add range with the numbers. And let's take a look at another way we can do that. I can also declare a string, and I'm going to show you this. We'll talk about arrays later on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare my string array as a string array on that. And this is how we do that. And then I'm going to initialize it right away with the values that we've been using. And then I'm going to issue a add range method on the array that I have. And since this is an array, it will have the toList ability behind it to populate our ListBox with this one. So let's run it with this change now using the array, in this case bringing in the values with the add range method. Let's run this one. Okay, I've got it up and running. I'm going to clear it out, and now I'm going to hit it with using the array with the add range, and there they come in as well. Okay, let's go back to our form again, and we can load also by a data source. And as you saw with the smart GIF that I showed you, I can click on that and go with the data source. Or I can also take the option of coming over to the properties area of the ListBox, and you'll see that I have the data source here that I can key in as well as the display member. So we have the smart GIF, which makes it a little bit easier to choose that one to bring it in and populate it. And this is probably the way I mostly would use it. Here I'd be bringing in the binding source of a table, and then I'd display one of the fields in that table in my ListBox. But we're going to do it with code behind the scenes. So let's go back to the code for using the data source. Back to the code. And here is the code for using a data source that I have written. Once again, I'm clearing out the values. And one of the things I'm going to do for this one, because the data source is a little bit different kind of way to deal with the ListBox, there's certain things that need to be done. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the selection mode. The default selection mode for the ListBox is 1 on that, so we can select one item from the ListBox. But the quick thing I want to do is turn off the selected index change, which is the default event, so it doesn't fire while I load this. So I'm going to code selection mode as none first on this, and then I'm going to use the string array again that we did before, But I'm going to now apply that string array to the data source. And then I've got some other things I'm going to take care of because of the fact that data source is different. We can't sort the list box. So I'm going to turn off the ability to sort, and I'm going to turn off some other things as well as the items, adding in items from the bottom. The data source is where the values come in, and so we can't add it in the same way once we've declared using it as a data source. Then after I've basically loaded it in right through this line on 130, my list box data source equals my string array. Then we come back down and I turn back on selection mode 1. That will then turn back on the ability to select values in there without firing off that select index change event, and we'll see this actually run. So basically we're using a data source, and we'll see this run. Okay, here I'm going to clear it out, and now we're going to use it by a data source, and it came in just that same way. I can select on this. Now this reset button that you saw become active is to turn this back to the settings to get it back for the other options on that. So I'm going to hit the reset, and it'll clear out and get ready for the other actions. So remember, a data source is one kind of method we can use. Usually we're using it from a database coming in with values we're populating into our list box. But at times we might use it from an array that we've defined in our code. This is one way to do it. I would prefer that if I was using an array in my program, I'd use the items add range, bringing in the array, that method. Now let's take a look at load by from a file, and this is actually, to me, a programmer's way of doing things, where things can be changed and dynamically updated and changed. You see over here on the side, I have in my solution a text file, and I'll just show you the file, and you'll see that this has the same names in the file that I'm going to be working with. And basically what I'm going to do is read in the names text file and populate this through that method. So let's take a look at the code behind that, loading it in from a file. So I'm going to click on line 150 here and export. Now one of the things to run this is we need the import system and import system IO at the very top of our class, which you see I've already coded at the very top. And then we come down to the code that actually does this. And I've made this very simple at this point. What I'm using is a stream reader. And I'm already have a constant defined at the very top of my class that knows that I'm using the names text file. And the stream reader is being declared. Instead of using the DIM keyword or reserve word, I'm using the using in place of it, which allows it to automatically dispose of itself at the end of the run. And so basically the same thing as adding by item, and we see the method right here, but I turn off first of all my painting with the begin update, and then I'm going to do a do while not end of stream on my stream reader. So I'm going to be reading one line at a time. That one line then goes into my lines string, dim line as string, comes in here. Then I'm going to add that line to the list box with the items add method. I'll loop through till I get to the end of the file. Once I get to the end of the file, I'll turn back on the ability to paint with the end update. Now, if for some reason there's a problem reading the file, I want to catch that. Anytime you use an IO method or to read something from the drive, you need to do a try-catch block. We'll talk more about catching errors, but if I do have an error, we'll see that I'll issue a message back to the user saying there's a problem reading the file. So let's see this one quickly load in, and I'll hit this one as we see it running. Okay, add it up and running. And I'm going to clear it out, and now I'm going to do a load from file. And it quickly comes in. So it comes in very fast. It's reading from the file. The file's on the disk in the area of the project, so it'll be right there available. Now, I want to point out one thing as I end this program. To make this type of approach where I have a file with my project, we have to define the file uniquely, and I'm going to come back to that. Let me go back to the design. Over in my Solution Explorer, you'll see the names text file that I brought in. Now, all I did was I came up here to the project itself and hit the add on this one, where I added in a new value. I hit add new item and made it a text item. But once I added it in, I changed the properties of it, and I made it build action content and copy if newer to the output directory. That way, as I compile the project and even publish this project, this file will be part of that project and go with it. So you want to make certain that if you have an internal file that you need to have with your project, you change the build action to content, and that you want to copy if newer to your output directory. In this case, it goes into the bin or release folders for the run. So just an important thing to remember, this is one of the things you need to change if you're going to compile this program with a file. But it makes it much nicer to use a file because we are able to quickly code changes to our file and add something to it and load it in very quickly. This is a little bit more advanced area, not that much, but we haven't talked about the stream reader at this point in our series. But this is a dynamic way of loading that list box instead of hard coding values as you've seen thus far in the program. Okay, let's go back to our form. We've done the clear method. We've done it by items add, by items add range. We've done it through the data source and through loading it from a file with the stream reader. Now let's take a look at how we can load data in with a text box and the add button. Let's look at the code behind that. Okay. Now what I have done is when you hit the add button, it goes through this procedure. And what I'm looking at is the item text box text property, where it will have some values that I'm keying into that text box. Well, first of all, I want to check to make certain it does have text in it, so that I don't run this procedure at all if there's nothing there to process. So I can hit the add button, but if I haven't put anything in it, if it's null or white space, it'll basically jump around. So I'm using not a string is null or white space type of function to check on this. And if it turns out that it is a true statement, that it is a null or white space, then I'm not going to run the code below it. If it turns out it is one that is has values into it, this will return back a no or negative false value. And I'm basically saying if it's false, and I'm turning it around with the not to make this line conditional true statement, then I'm going to run the code in here. Now what I've done here is I've coded for preventing duplicates from entering in. If I had just the my list box items add of the value that was keyed in, I would get duplicates in there. So what I'm doing before that is I'm looking at the items collection using the contains method and passing in the value of that text box to see if it's already in my list box. If it's not in that collection of items, then I'm going to go ahead and add it in. If it is in that collection, I'm going to bypass these lines of code and process on out. So here I add in that value, and after I've added it into the list box, then I'm going to clear out the text box at that point. So let's run this line of code. Okay, we've got our code running. I'm going to clear. Well, no, I won't clear it out. I'll put something else in. Let's put in somebody else's name. I'll put in Ralph. And I'll hit add. And because I don't have a null or a white space only, I've got some value here. It should process on in. And Ralph does not appear in the list, so it should go on in. And it does. Now let's make key in Joe, which does appear in the list. And I'll hit add. And it won't go in. And it won't clear out. Now if I change it from Joe to something else, let's say I did all uppercase, a little bit different, it will go in on that. So I could have a case sensitive issue, and there is a way to code for that using the find string exact as well. So I can have two different Joes, but I did a very simple looking with the contains to see if it already appeared in my list. So this basically is a combo box. The top part is the text part of the combo box, and the list part is the drop down part of the combo box, with the using the add button here to run that procedure. Now the one last thing I haven't shown you is the sort up here, and I want to show you that one. I have just a checkbox. I'm going to click on it, and you'll see that the items will sort alphabetically, and there they go on that. So you saw that very quickly I can sort it. Now when I uncheck it, it'll stay as is. It won't revert back to what it was, but it takes the values and sorts it on that. And that is a very simple type of coding. I'll show you that as we go into the code. And that code I actually had up at the very top. And this is the area of the sort. And all I did was I looked at the text box or checkbox, the sorted checkbox, to see if it was checked or not checked. And it returns back a Boolean value of true or false. And that's exactly what I want to do to the list box. The list box has a property of true or false, as well as a combo box. So we can sort a combo box or a list box by setting its value to true on that, and then the items in there will be sorted in an alphabetical way, or from ascending to descending. Now the important thing is, for efficiency, if I'm loading in a large amount of data, it should be already sorted as well before I load it in. Otherwise we're wasting a lot of CPU time processing the sorting activity on that. But we can't have that sorted, and that was just a simple toggling of taking whatever the value of the checkbox property was and assigning it to the list box's sorted value, which takes a Boolean value as well. So there's our code in a nutshell. I want to show you one last feature, but I'm not going to go into explaining it. I also want to show you, though, that we do have the documentation for everything you see in this video out there. If you'll click on this in paste bin, so you might want to pause the video at this point and copy down this information. All this code is in paste bin for you to look at and see the code. Also, the screen capture is out Imgur for you to look at the screen again. And of course, this presentation is out at Bolen Presents at YouTube. So these are the different spots where you can find the information about it. Also, I have, and I'm going to show you the drag and drop. And I'm not going to go into detail on the drag and drop method on that. You can see here that I've given you the link to MSDN's site where it talks about drag and drop. And basically, I went out there and took their code and modified it a little bit to allow drag and drop, and I want to show you that at this time. So let me start the code, bring up our program, and what I'm going to do is show you how you can do drag and drop. So I'm going to go over here to Sally and click and grab Sally, and I'm going to pull Sally across. I'm holding down the mouse button, and you'll see my cursor's changed a little bit. And then I'm going to bring it down to the text box and release, and Sally will go down there and come out of the list box. So I can also click the button to add her back in. And I've also have a way, let's put in somebody else's name. I'll put in Lila, and I can take this and hold down my mouse button here and come back up and release, and it'll go in there as well. So we can use drag and drop in and out of our list box. Now, the one last thing I'd like to demonstrate to you is that the list box has the ability to select items, and the default is to select one, and that's how it's coded right now, but we can have it so we can select multiple items on that, or select none. But I've coded this with the for one item, and I'm going to hit Linda, and when I click on Linda, it'll fire off the index change event. And once that event is fired off, I've coded to show a message box of the value I've selected. So let's hit Linda and watch the message box pop up. And there's our message box popping up on that saying you have selected Linda on that. So I want to show you the code. The default for ComboBox and a ListBox is the index change event. This is where we code for the selection of values on that. So let's take a look at how this code was done. Okay, let's come down now to the index change event. And here's the index change event. And it's very simple on the index selected index change event. Basically, I'm going to the list box and I'm looking at selected items. And first of all, I want to make certain that it has a value that's been selected. And so I'm saying take a look at selected item, and if it is not nothing, then I want to show what it was. And here's where we bring in the object. Selected item is an object, so I have to cast it into a string with the toString method, and in our string that we're building up here. So I take my list box selected items to string and concatenate it with the ampersand with the you selected. I have spelling here. You selected my text box on that, and here's the caption for our box. So let me run this again. Show you that I'm going to hit Susan, and it clicked up with the value. You selected Susan on that, bringing this particular line of code into play. So there you have it. You have seen a lot of things that this can do. The drag and drop is a special area that it's down below for you to see in code. Once again, I want you to go out to Pastebin to see all that code, and you'll see how to do a drag and drop. But that's a more advanced technique that you'll learn later on in your coding to make it a little bit more snazzier and put with your bells and whistles. So remember, you can get all the information at pastebin.com of this code. The screen captures at Imager, and of course this presentation is at Bolen Presents on that. So I highly recommend that you take a look at the code, learn how to use the list box, because the list box is very nice. We can use it for a number of different things, and I hope that you'll take advantage of learning how to use ListBox. And the one thing I saved for last is this: how to use the multiple columns, because that's what makes the ListBox really special. So let's do our last part of the multi-column. Back to our code. Okay, multi-column only requires a change to the form, and I want to show you that change. So I'm going to take the form right now and drag it up a little bit, and you'll see that the scroll bar, vertical scroll bar kicked in right away because I've now made it too tight. But I'm going to come over to the properties of the list box, and there is a multiple column property, and I'm going to turn on multiple column to true now. Watch what happened. Now we've got the multiple columns, and because I made column width half the size of the whole size of the list box, it's very nice, and I can tighten this up and you'll see it change on that, so we can have multiple volumes on that. I'm going to hit a run of this one, and you'll see that it'll come up, and I can once again select on those values as well on that. And if I added something, it'll go in just as well. So if I added a couple things in there, another one, and let's add another one, make it a little unique, and I'll put in even another one, and we'll see the scroll part kick in, and now we can see it scrolling as well. So the ListBox can have multiple columns to it as well, and that makes this a very unique kind of control over a ComboBox. But whatever you choose, be it using it as a straight ListBox with no columns but one, that's fine, and you'll see how you can use it for different things. It's a nice one for displaying values to show the user what's available, to control their selection, and it is also true of the ComboBox. The ListBox, though, shows all the values up on the screen and gives us the vertical scroll bar. If we have values, too many values in our collection that won't fit into our box, we'll see it scroll, and so we can use it that way. So learn how to use the ListBox, play with this demo, practice, change some settings, learn how it's done. Take advantage of the idea of loading from a file, because basically programmers do not want to hard code things. And while you might see hard coding in a demo, in reality, in the business world, we want to bring things in from files or from databases. We don't want to have things coded hard code wise into our coding of our program. So take a look at the use of the stream reader. It's a little bit more advanced concept. We'll look at it later on, but you'll see how it's done, and then we'll also learn about how to use a database later on with the ComboBox. So until next time, take care, get your hands dirty in the code, and I'll see you.